wind. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the GPS technology that goes on in here and in your cell phone. So this summarizes it. There are 32 GPS satellites up in the sky, and each one of them sends two signals at two frequencies, shown there by the blue and the red. And the survey-grade GPS will pick up and use both signals from the satellite, and it can get 2 centimeter position accuracy. And the consumer GPS, such as in your phone, will only pick up one of those signals, and it can get 1 to 5 meter accuracy. Now, if you paid attention, or if you try this after my talk and go outside in the parking lot, you might not notice 1 meter accuracy. Typically, you might notice closer to 5. The way to see this is if you park your car somewhere and you bring up Google Maps or Apple Maps on your phone and put the satellite view where you can actually see the parking spaces, you'll generally see it. It will know to within a parking spot where you are. So it's about 5 meters. However, now the reason for that, the reason it's typically around about the 5 meter is really two things: the very small antenna and the blockage you get from buildings on land and the reflections you get off buildings. The signal, instead of coming straight at you, might get blocked by a building, reflected off another building, and that has a big impact on accuracy. So it's really quite simple to get down to 1 meter for applications like sailing. And so now let me move to the data I promised you. So I'll show you how we test these things. Our test vessel is this. It's a Nissan One design, 17-foot length overall, 6-foot beam. Doesn't have foils, but it can go 40 knots. And on the left, you'll see this antenna. And then in the middle, so as I mentioned, every week we do these tests anyway as part of our business. We usually just have the cell phones in the car because that's how people use them. But seeing as I was preparing for a talk about sailing, okay, thank you. What we did is collect some data where, instead of using the very small antenna that's inside the cell phone, we use slightly better antennas. These things are called patch antennas. This is the kind of thing you typically find in marine GPS. It's that size. So you can see it's a whole lot better than that little thing the size of the edge of a dime. And it makes a big difference. Having that kind of antenna instead of the cell phone antenna makes a big difference. So we put those on. And instead of testing in downtown San Francisco, where we usually test, we went to a nice open area to emulate what it would be like out in the water. So by the way, all through the last couple of years, we didn't really know it until we started focusing in on this, but we have these systems and we're testing here in San Francisco, and Stan and his team are testing out there almost equidistant from the club. Just we like to be in amongst the buildings and they like to be out in the open. So there's this going on in parallel. And to emulate being on the water, we put this on the van and went out in a nice open area. And I'll show you the results. So so you can see what the dots on the map correspond to. We use white for the America's Cup system, red for the middle antenna, blue for the right-hand antenna. And there's our test area. That's the 49ers new stadium down in Santa Clara. Our Broadcom office is just down the road from that. And we drive around that open area. We told the drivers to go at between 5 and 9 knots to emulate a typical boat. And they said, huh? And I said 5 to 10 miles per hour, and they were happy with that. And so that's the speed they went to try and show you how does this thing behave at the kind of speeds we're expecting if you're using it on a typical club boat and not on a big cat. And so there's the picture on the left of the reality, and you can see right away by looking at how the dots show up that we're getting something like a meter accuracy, because the distance from white to blue in reality is a meter, and then at the bottom left it measures out at 1.2 meters, and then you can see at the top the blue and the red swap over for a little bit, so we're not always getting the perfect accuracy, but it's within about a meter. You can see that just by looking at it. And then what we always do is collect all the data, of course, and get a quantitative result. And so that looks like this. So these are the median values, which means that of all the data we collected, all hundreds of points, half of them are better than this number and half of them are worse than this number. It's the in-between number. So the position accuracy we get off the consumer product is 1 meter. The heading or track accuracy is half a degree, and the speed 0.2 knots. So you can see those are pretty decent numbers. Let me dwell for a little bit on heading and track. This is just using the software that you have in a phone anyway. and it's optimized for typical phone uses. And so we don't make a distinction between heading and track. We treat them as if they're the same thing in our software. Because in a car, usually there's no leeway. Okay. Maybe sometimes, usually at the end of the life of the car. And so it's better for use in the car if you just treat the two as the same. So for side-by-side comparison, you can treat that as heading. However, as I mentioned, there is a gyroscope and there is a magnetic compass inside the phone. So we can just easily change the software to produce heading and track separately for a sailing application if we wanted to.
Is he driving a specific route, or is he following the GPS?
He's just driving a specific route, and then to do the accuracy comparison, we treat this system as the truth, and we're doing the we say, where is that white antenna? We do the translation over 0.36 meters in the one case. Where should the red antenna be? And then we work out the accuracy from that. Okay. So one thing, I want to give you the main purpose of the talk is to really show you what consumer GPS and MEMS technology could do for cloud sailing, but also I want you you should learn something that's helpful in your ordinary life. So, and that is that just to know that inside most smartphones, the inertial measurement unit, the gyroscopes, accelerometers, and the GPS are already tightly integrated. They're all the software that we develop uses all that information, and as long as your phone is mounted nicely, like in a dashboard mount, something like this, if you have your phone inside that up on the windshield on the dashboard, and it's not shaking around, then it will automatically recognize that it's in that situation, and it will make use of those gyroscopes when you drive through the city, and you get much better performance out of your GPS by that. So that's a little take-home bit of knowledge for you. And so in this case, it's like that. Everything's nice and stable, and so we're getting the benefits of the gyroscopes as well. So this replicates what would happen if we made a system that you could bolt onto your boat somehow. So that's the quantitative results. Now, how does that compare with the America's Cup boat? So to put them side by side. So position, America's Cup boat 2 centimeters versus a meter, heading 0.1 versus 0.5, and speed is 0.04 knots on these AC systems versus 0.2. So on the right here, I'm putting the scale factor. How much worse are we than what they have on AC? So with position, it's 50 times, but the interesting thing is with heading and speed, it's only 5 times different. And for things like tracking boats and for doing any kind of judging, the heading and track and speed are often as important or more important than the position. You probably remember in one of the later races when Oracle was in the middle of its great comeback, where Jimmy Squill got New Zealand, where he hooked them at the start and left them all the way up, and they left up, and you could hear on the television Ainsley shouting at them, "You got to tack here, you've got to tack," and they went head to win and they didn't tack, and they were given a penalty, and the umpires decided that by looking at the heading and the track, not so much the position. They saw that the heading and track was changing, and then stopped changing, and so they determined that New Zealand didn't do enough to keep clear. They should have kept going, and they should have tacked. But they didn't want to tack, of course, because they would have been on port and going away from the line. And so the umpiring decision was made off the heading and the track. So the fact that we can get those numbers, half a degree heading accuracy and 0.2 knots on speed, and we can also get similar number on track if we separate the two, is quite significant in terms of what might come next.